Then the grave and the cell finish the work. Welcome back to the red cobblestone road. Come walk with me. If the womb is the first battlefield and the streets are the next one, then the grave and the cell are where the damage gets finished. That is the pattern. The child survives the womb. The boy gets shaped by chaos. The streets get his ear. The culture gets his mind. The block gets his anger. The music gets his imagination. And then comes the outcome, the grave or the cell. That is where all the ignored warnings cash out, because the grave and the cell do not appear out of nowhere. They are usually the end of a long trail, a trail of weak discipline, a trail of fatherlessness, a trail of soft correction, a trail of poison in the headphones, a trail of rage without restraint, a trail of boys never taught how to master insult, shame, lust, pride, and fear. That is the road. And too many people want to start the story at the end. They want to start at the funeral, start at the arrest, start at the sentencing, start at the police tape, start at the courtroom. No. By then, the damage has already been growing for years. The grave did not start at the bullet. The cell did not start at the judge. It started back when the boy first learned that feelings were king, back when nobody checked the mouth, back when nobody restrained the hands, back when rebellion was excused as pain, back when disrespect was laughed off, back when the streets became more believable than the father and more attractive than the home. That is where it started. Then the grave and the cell come along and finish what chaos began. That is the hard word, because the grave finishes possibility. Everything the boy could have been buried. Everything he might have built buried. Everything he might have fathered, led, protected, restored, buried. That is why the grave is so cruel. It does not just take a body, it takes a future. And the cell does its own kind of finishing. The cell finishes freedom, finishes momentum, finishes young years, finishes reputation, finishes opportunity, finishes the illusion that a boy can live lawless and still somehow come out whole. That is what the cell does. Now hear it clearly. The grave and the cell are not equal. One still breathes. One still has a chance to repent. One still has a chance to come back, even if scarred. The grave gives no such mercy, but both are outcomes of a people refusing to stop the bleeding earlier. That is the point. Too many of our boys are being finished by one of two systems, the cemetery or the prison, and both systems are swallowing what should have become fathers, husbands, workers, leaders, builders, and elders. That is not just crime. That is generational destruction. That is the future being thinned out in real time, because every young man buried too early weakens the next generation. Every young man locked away weakens the next generation. Every boy lost to the grave or the cell leaves one less stabilizing force for the community that should have been shaped by him. That is why this cannot be softened. The grave and the cell are not random outcomes. They are often the final chapters of a story people were too cowardly to interrupt earlier, too cowardly to discipline, too cowardly to correct, too cowardly to confront the music, too cowardly to challenge the culture, too cowardly to say no, too cowardly to stand between the boy and the chaos when the boy still could be reached. That is the truth. And now look at the damage. Mothers grieving, fathers ashamed, children growing up without examples, girls growing up with fewer stable men around them, communities normalizing funerals, memorial shirts, jail visits, and courtroom tears. That is what happens when the grave and the cell finish the work. And let's say the line hard. The grave finishes what the streets harden. The cell finishes what weak homes failed to restrain. That is the pattern. So if Black America wants to stop the bleeding, it cannot wait until the grave. It cannot wait until the cell. It cannot wait until the arrest, the arraignment, the sentencing, the funeral, the obituary, the balloons, or the candlelight vigil. It has to cut the chain earlier, at the womb, at the home, at the father, at the mother, at the school, at the church, at the first lie, at the first act of rebellion, at the first sign the boy is being shaped by something dark. That is where the fight has to be, because once the grave gets him, the fight is over. And once the cell closes on him, the price is already enormous. That is the burden. Protect the child in the womb. Raise the boy in the house. I love you, little one. Correct him before the street shapes him. Teach him control before the block teaches him reaction. Teach him obedience before the grave teaches silence and the prison teaches regret. That is the warning, because if we do not stop the chain early, the grave and the cell will keep finishing the work, and the community will keep calling it tragedy, when much of it was tolerated destruction all along. That is the fire, that is the burden, and that is the truth. Thanks for walking with me today on the red cobblestone road. Like, share, and comment.